Fine. Now, yesterday we had stopped over here. That is, I had just opened the browser, gone to a website. Now, what if I have to interact with the components of a page, right? Or interact with the objects of a page. All the components on the page, button, link, input boxes, radio button, check boxes, even the browser and all, text is technically known as an object. That's what I told you yesterday. It's technically known as an object. So how does Selenium work? How do you identify the objects which are present on the page? Alright, I'll just explain you. Just hold on. If you talk about Selenium, just hold on. I have to downgrade the Firefox version as well. I'll do that. Suppose I go to the website bbc.com. Fine. If I go to the website bbc.com, right? Here is bbc.com. Look, for us, the normal page is like this. What Selenium does is, Selenium goes into the page source and works on the page source. Okay, if you right click on the page, if you look at the option over here, view page source, you will get the page source of this page. What is the page source? Page source is nothing but technically it is the HTML code. The HTML code which lies behind the scenes, like the HTML code which you get from the server. Okay, so Selenium works on the HTML code. Now HTML code, you need to understand the HTML language. Okay, it is very simple. Okay, it's not a big deal. In HTML, we have got tags and we have got attributes. Okay, for example, all these things which start with a conical bracket and are reddish in color, these are tags. Div is a tag, script is a tag, p para is a tag. Okay, now a tag can have multiple attributes. For example, p is a tag here and id is technically known as an attribute for this tag. Okay, h2 is a tag here and class and id are the two attributes of this tag. Fine. Okay, so in HTML you have got tags and attributes which ultimately end up making a web element. For example, if you look at this highlighted portion, div is a tag, class and id are the two attributes of this tag. Okay, fine. Now let's look at how Selenium works. Okay, now I would seriously request you guys to just go to Google and give around 15-20 minutes on an HTML tutorial. You just search for HTML tutorial on Google, right? And sorry guys, just 1 minute. Alright, so this is the HTML tutorial, right? W3 schools. Just go there and study initial topics. That's it, not more. The one which I have highlighted are more than enough. Okay, it's also got try it yourself and all, which is quite helpful. Right now, I'll talk about HTML and I'll talk about the components first before I move further. How Selenium identifies the objects and all. Right now, the first thing which you need to do is that you need to install something known as Firebug in your Mozilla. Okay, Firebug is an add-on in Mozilla which helps you to analyze the page source. Okay, you have to go to the website google.com and just type Firefox Firebug. Go to the first this thing, and this is the link. Okay, addons.mozilla.org. You go to this. Make sure that you are opening this on a Firefox. Okay, make sure you're opening this on a Firefox, and you click on Add to Firefox button out here. So the add-on will get added to the Firefox. Okay, fine. And Firefox will be restarted, and once it's restarted, you will see an icon on Firefox somewhere out here. Okay, you will see Firebug option. When you open this Firebug, a window like this will come up. Fine. In this window, there will be an arrow out here. Okay, if you click on this arrow and move your mouse on the page, you will start getting the page source of your site under the HTML tab. There are various tabs. Okay, just look at the HTML tab. Under the HTML tab, you will start getting the page source. Alright, so this helps you to investigate the page in a better way. Also, suppose you have a Chrome. You have Chrome browser, right? And suppose you are on any website. Say I am on hold on, ebay.com. Now on Chrome, how do I inspect the web page? In Firefox, I told you can use Firebug. Okay, on Chrome, the inspector is inbuilt. Technically it's known as Chrome Inspector. Chrome Inspector is inbuilt. Suppose I want to investigate this search button. Okay, how it looks like in the page source. You right click on this button in Chrome and you select the option Inspect Element. Okay, when you do that, the window over here opens up with the element highlighted. Okay, so in Chrome Inspector is there. You can right click on element and select Inspect Element. Fine. In IE, F12 is the shortcut which opens up the developer tool. Okay, you hit F12 in IE, the developer tool will open up. You have to inspect the page source through the developer tool in IE. Alright, fine. Now in Firebug, Mozilla, you can use, so in Mozilla you can use Firebug, in Chrome you can use Chrome Inspector, and in IE you can use IE developer tool, which opens up when you hit the keyboard key F12. Okay, Charu, I am not sure about Safari. To be very honest, I have never used it so frequently. Okay, I don't use Mac, so rather I can install Safari on Windows as well, but I don't use it that much. So I'll have to check it out. Fine, but there is one thing. If there is a text field or a button on a web page, okay, the HTML code for that text field or button will remain same throughout the browsers. Suppose I am on ebay.com on Mozilla. Okay, and I investigate this search button. So this search button has got this code. The tag name is input. This ID is gn underscore button, class is this, type is submit. Right. So the same thing will be there in Chrome as well. Don't think that the code will differ. No. In Chrome as well, the tag is input, ID is gh underscore button and all everything. Okay. So don't worry. Right. In Safari also it will remain same. Fine. In Safari as well, it will remain same. All right. Fine. Now we will make a small Excel file and call it objects.xls. So I'll discuss about the various HTML components which you have on the page. Right. That's how you will understand. Right. So I'll make some columns over here. I'll make the column name component, tag name, mandatory attribute, and optional attributes. All right. Okay. Now, you know what? Every component on the page, right, has a tag name and set of attributes. Some of these attributes are optional, and at least one of them is mandatory. You will always find one of the attributes with the tag for a particular element. Okay, I'll discuss that. Just be with me. Fine. For example, what are the components on the page? On a page, there is a text field, right? On a page, there is a button, right? Then there are radio buttons. Then there is a checkbox. Fine. Sometimes you have links on a page. You have a drop down, right? The multi-select drop down. Okay. You also have normal text on the page. Okay, normal text is also there on the page. You have got image on a page, right? So these are the components which are generally visible to the human eye. Okay, if you feel that there is some other component, please let me know. Apart from this, you have components like web table is there, or frames are there, which are not visible to the human eye. I'll not talk about them right now. Okay, these are invisible components, not invisible, but these are not visible regularly. So these are the components I'm going to talk about. Let's start with text field. Okay, if you talk about text field, for example, this search field is a text field out here. Hold on, sorry. If I analyze this text field, right, you will observe that the tag name of this text field is input. Okay, the tag name for this text field is input. So I'll copy this tag name. I'll place it here. For a button, right? All the text fields, of all the text fields of all the applications which are there, okay, will have the tag name as input, right? Don't think that every text field will have a different tag name. No, all the text fields will have the tag name. If I talk about a button, for example, there is a button. This is the button, search button. Okay, this search button is also having the tag name as input. All the buttons in all the web applications have the tag name input. Rather, from my experience, I know that text field, button, radio button, and checkboxes, all these four components have the tag names as input tag. Input tag. Okay, fine. Alright. Now, if you talk about, say, a link on a web page, if you If I look at any one of the links, for example, download is a link over here. It's got the tag anchor tag. Now many of you must be knowing this. A link always starts with anchor tag A, right, in the HTML code. So the tag name for a link is A. For a drop down list, right? For example, on eBay, this is a drop list. Okay, it's got a multiple selection and all everything. So if you look at this drop list in Firebug, you'll find that the tag name is select. So all the drop lists in all the web-based applications have the tag name as select. For text, for a text, you cannot categorize any tag. Sometimes it's in span, sometimes it's in div tag, sometimes in para tag. Okay, you cannot define a single tag for text. There is no generic tag for text. It can come under any tag. For example, a simple text like this: explore a new way to shop with collections and all. If you look at this text, then this text is inside the para tag P. Fine. So you will not find that text. You will not never find the text always under para tag. For example, this text: discover the best eBay today. This one is inside the heading 3 H3 tag. Okay. So you cannot categorize text in a specific tag name. But if you have a drop down, then a drop down will always have the tag name select, link will have anchor tag, checkbox, radio button, text field, all of them will have tag names input. Okay. If you talk about an image on a web page, for example, out here on the top, this is an image, eBay image. Okay. If you look at this eBay image in the page source, then image will always have the tag name img. Okay, image will always have the tag name img. So if you look at the Excel file, I can put the img tag name. So these are the various tag names. Now with each and every of these tags, you will always find some mandatory and optional attributes. Okay, let's talk about mandatory attributes first. For a text field, okay, if you look at any text field in any web-based application, the tag name will be input, okay, but there will be an attribute known as type equals to text. This attribute will be present with every text field. Type equals to text makes it a text field. Okay, please remember this. Fine. So if I copy this, place it here. This type equals to text attribute is a mandatory attribute, and it is, if the tag name is input and type is text, it becomes a text field. Okay. If you look at the button, the search button, right? For a button, the tag name is input and the mandatory attribute is again type. If type becomes equals to submit, right? If the type becomes equals to submit, it becomes a button. Fine. For a radio button, the type becomes equals to radio. I know that from experience. And from checkbox, for checkbox, the type is a checkbox. So if the tag name is input and the type is checkbox, it will become a checkbox. If tag name is input, type is submit, it will become a button. Fine. So with this combination of tag name and mandatory attribute, okay, these four components on the page, they are found. Link. If you look at any link on the page, then link has an anchor tag A. Then always you will find a link having an attribute known as href. Href attribute points towards the URL which will open when you click on the link. For example, if I click on the motors link, this is the URL which will open motors.ebay.com. Okay, so please remember this, that the href attribute will always be present with every link. It's a mandatory attribute. Okay, and it will point towards the URL which will open up when you click on the link. Okay, drop down select has got no mandatory attribute. It's only the tag name. There is no mandatory attribute. Even text has got no mandatory attribute. There can be any attribute associated with span, div, para, tag. Right. So these drop down and text, they don't have any specific mandatory attribute. For an image on a web page, right? For example, this is an eBay image on the top which I was talking about. You will always find the source attribute, okay, which will point towards the URL from which this image is loading. If I copy this URL and if I open it up, you will see that this eBay image comes up, which is actually being displayed out here. Okay, so the image attribute will always have the tag name source. You can copy this tag and you can place it over here. Source tag points towards the URL from which the image is being loaded with the application. I hope you are able to understand this. If you are not able to understand, please feel free to ask. So these are the tag names in the HTML, and these are the various mandatory attributes. Now there are some optional attributes. Okay, majority of them are ID, name, class. So these can be present with any of these components. Okay, you will always find these mandatory attributes, and if the developer decides, he can give some optional attributes to the component as well. Okay, for example, if you look at this text field, search text field, it's got an ID. It's also got a class. Okay, so with this you can uniquely identify the objects, right? So we use the combination of tag name, mandatory attribute, optional attributes and all to identify the objects on the page, right? So this is a little important. Fine, I categorized the complete page. I took out the various components which can be present on a web page, right? I took out the tag name, I took out the mandatory attributes, and I took out the optional attributes. I'm sorry. Right. Okay. Now, how do I go forward and identify the object on the page? Right. Well, in Selenium, there are various identification mechanisms. You can identify using ID, you can identify using name, you can identify using XPath, CSS selector, right? So there are many types of identification mechanisms. So the various types of identification mechanisms are also technically known as locator strategies. Okay, right? So I'll talk about it now. That is, how do you use these various components and their combination to identify the objects, right? What is the simplest way of identifying something on a web page? The simplest way is to identify it using ID or name, because these two attributes, they are generally unique. If the developer is good, obviously he will not give same ID or same name to different objects. Okay, right? But every object on a page will never have an ID or name. You cannot expect that every link, every text, every button on this page will have a unique ID with which you can identify this object. Fine, so search field is okay. It's got this ID equals to GH-AC, right? So I can identify, I can write a Selenium code which will tell that go and find the object on the page whose tag name is input and whose ID is this. So Selenium can do that. But not everything can have an ID, right? For example, this take a tour button. It's not got any ID. Okay, so how do I identify those kinds of objects which have not got ID or name or something? So we use XPath, we use XCSS selectors and all over there. Okay, so we'll move over to it. We will see how do we identify. But first, let me go to the documentation of Selenium first. Hold on. Yeah, in Selenium, there is an interface. There is an interface known as web element. Okay, if you have studied QTP, then please don't confuse this with the web element of QTP. Okay, web element of QTP is completely different. Okay, so in web element is equivalent to object in Selenium. Like any component on a web page is a web element. It represents an HTML element. For example, they have generalized any object on the page to a web element. Right? For example, a link is a web element in Selenium. In Selenium, a text field is a web element. All these components are categorized under web element. Okay, and this interface web element has got simple functions like, for example, clear. Clear will clear the value of a text field. Click will click somewhere on the page. Click on a button, click on a link, click on a radio button, click on a checkbox. So this is a generic function, right? Just ignore these ones right now. For example, get text. It will get the visible text out of the web page. Right? Is displayed will tell you whether the element is displayed on the web page or not. Send keys. This function will actually type value into an input field or something. We use this method to simulate typing into an element. Okay. So there are various functions in this interface web element which can be used with a generic component on a page. Okay, you have to click somewhere, you have to type somewhere, right? That's what you do in on the web page, right? You click, you type. These are the two basic operations. So this thing will help you out with that. Okay, so how do you use this web element interface? Okay, if you look at this WebDriver interface over here, then WebDriver interface has got a function known as find element. It finds the first element using the given method. Right, hold on, I'll copy this code sample Selenium which we had made yesterday. I'll copy this class and paste it in the current project. I get errors because Selenium jars are not included in today's project. So whenever you make a project, you include the jars. Hold on. Right. Okay. Now out here I wrote the code to go to bbc.com. Right. After going to bbc.com, or I write ebay.com. Okay. It's more than enough to include Selenium jar files. Okay. Just hold on. When I try to open Safari browser, I get class one. Look, Charu, have you included have you registered? I'm talking about Safari driver over here. Somebody is not able to work with it. Look, to work with Safari driver, you have to first register with Apple as a developer, and then you have to download a certificate and include it in your Safari. Have you downloaded the certificate and included it in Safari? Have you done that? Yes, you haven't, so it will not work. Okay, just go to Google And types
Ashish,
of
so do you recommend that right now for learning purposes we use mostly Firefox? Is that the best thing to use?
for learning purposes, you can use Chrome and Firefox. That's the best.
Okay.
Okay.
Thanks.
Yeah. Yes, for Safari, this is the documentation. You have to follow some steps. Okay, you can refer this link. Okay, you have to uh, register with Apple as a developer and then download a certificate and install it in Safari. Okay, right. So it was I was talking about the WebDriver interface. The WebDriver interface has got a function find element, which is capable of finding the first element using the given method. That means if I write over here after going to ebay.com, if I want to find something on the page, you can write driver dot find element. Okay, driver dot find element. Now how do I find the element? Okay, you have got various criteria. By is a class which tells you how to find the element. This is the internal class by, which has got various mechanisms used to locate elements within the document. Okay, fine. For example, these are the various ways. You can find the element with the XPath. You can find the element with the tag name, with the partial link text, with the name, with the link text, with the ID. So the highlighted ones, what I have highlighted over here, are the various mechanisms through which you can find the objects. Some of them are pretty clear to you. For example, find by link text or partial link text or name or ID, right? But like XPath or CSS selector over here might not be very clear to you. So I'll talk about them. Fine. So over here, when you write driver.find element, you have to give the criteria. The criteria is decided by the by class. In by class, all these functions are static in nature. You see that? ID, these are functions. Okay, they are static in nature. So you can directly access them by writing by dot. How do you want to identify the object? I want to identify the object by the ID. Okay, and you specify the ID out here. That is, in case of eBay, where is hold on. Actually, I have to downgrade the version of Firefox, which I haven't done. Just be with me. So this is the text field, and the ID was gh-ac. Okay, so you give the ID over here, so it will find the element on the web page. Now find element function, right? If you look at the documentation, just 1 minute. I should have opened it separately. Find element function is made in such a way that it returns you back the object reference of web element interface. Okay, what is web element? I talked about it. It's an interface which represents generic functions which can be performed on an object. Okay, so find element function returns you the reference of web element interface. Say web element search box is this. Fine. Okay, so it will find the element and it will return you web element. What do you want to do with this search box? If you want to type in something, you have to use the function send keys of the web element interface. You will have to use the function send keys. Okay, So you can write over here search box dot send keys hello. So this will type. There are other functions as well. If I want to clear the value of the text field, you can use the function clear, right? So I don't think so that will work because I'm using the latest Firefox version. Just be with me, guys. Hold on. I'll run this. I need to fix my machine, which I did do yesterday. It actually slipped out of my mind. Okay, it will not work. It will time out because I'm using the latest Firefox version. But basically, it's done like this. Okay, you go to the web page, you find an element by the ID or something. I'll fix up my machine. Fine.